All right, thanks very much for having me here today. My name is John Buchelin. I'm from an organisation called Rewiring Australia. So I'm here to talk to you more about the household level, the why we should be electrifying everything, and then get into the details on the how. So a little bit about me. First and foremost, I'm a dad. That's 2 out of my 3 kids there on a road trip to Canberra in our little EV. Anyone who thinks kids are going to be really excited about plugging a car in, as much as I was, on our first road trip is going to be sorely disappointed. They just wanted to get into Macca's for the 30-cent cone. But I've been in the sort of finance insurance industry for the last 10 or 15 to 20 years, and I've been getting more and more involved in sustainability, carbon accounting, and primarily focused on electric vehicles. And that's where I started working as a volunteer in our community group. So you guys have the WinZero, where I live in the Illawarra. We've got Electrify 2515, which I'll tell you more about a little bit later on. But that's just an example of the EV Open Day that we had last year, similar to the kind of event you're hosting here today. And so now I'm 2 months into a new role at Rewiring Australia. So you can see that's the team there. Saul Griffith, who I'll tell you a little bit more about later on, and his co-founder Dan Cass. We've also got 2 of the original members of Electrify 2515 and our managing director, Kate Minter. So we're a small team, we're a growing team, and I want to tell you a little bit about what we do. So it's a non-profit organisation, and we are trying to be the research and advocacy group for the household and the community. So there's a huge amount of work to be done in this energy transition, and our mission is to try to simplify that, make it fair on the households, and get everybody to a position where we can electrify everything and replace our fossil fuels with efficient electric machines powered by renewable energy. So that's the mission of the organisation. And for those of you who may not have heard of Saul Griffith, so he's an Australian engineer, inventor and author. He's been over in the States for about 20 years, starting up companies in renewable energy and working on massive government programs around mapping energy data. And that's led him to get involved in the policy making over there in the States. So you might have heard of the Inflation Reduction Act. That would be the single biggest thing Saul has been a part of in the last 2 to 3 years. So the Inflation Reduction Act is the biggest climate and energy policy ever passed anywhere in the world. And so 2 of the books that he wrote, Electrify, which was talking to the American policymakers, was part of how that Inflation Reduction Act was designed. And he's now moved to Australia, which we're super lucky to have, and literally ran into him in the street about 4 years ago and thought, hang on, I know that guy. Pretty easy to spot with the big beard, and so he's been helping our local community as well. So just a little bit on the Inflation Reduction Act, because it is something that we think is a super significant change for the good. It's bringing government money to the table to not only do the manufacturing and set a new standard for how America's manufacturing all the things we need to transition, but it's also money into the households as well. So one of the key designs of the Inflation Reduction Act is that it puts money into the households to afford the upfront costs to electrify their homes. So depending on your income, you can access up to $30,000 of tax credits, and then that can have huge amounts of savings across the whole community to then bring down your costs. So it's called the Inflation Reduction Act because it is anti-inflationary. So if you look at the pattern of costs to run your energy, this is across your home and your cars, it actually is going up, up and up. But once you bring in electrifying those homes and those cars and you power them by renewables, they will be locked in. And that is what we want to do here in Australia. So why electrify everything? So the way we like to think about it at Rewiring Australia is that we've obviously got the exports in Australia, which is things that are quite hard to decarbonise at the moment. There's things underway, but the solutions aren't quite there yet. But if you look over on the domestic side of our economy, so the cars we drive, go backwards. So the cars we drive and the homes that we heat and cool and cook in, that makes up around about 70% of our domestic emissions. So that is the low-hanging fruit that we've got the opportunity to do right now. The technology is there. It really is the financing, the education, and getting people mobilised to actually want to take that next step. I've broken the clicker, that's all right. So you would have heard this morning from Ty Christopher around the supply side of things. So there's obviously a huge amount of work to get renewables into the system, move them around the country, and set up the infrastructure for this electrified future. But what we want to focus on today is the demand side. So the conversations and the decisions that every household will make over the next 10 years and all of the machines that we need to electrify. There's a really great TED talk, which I'm sure we can share, where Saul actually spells out those machines. There's 100 million machines in Australia that we need to change, from leaf blowers to lawn mowers to jet skis and even scooters, which Saul makes his own scooters. So why do we want to do that? Because that's where the most savings are. So back in 2021, the Rewiring Australia team did a full assessment of the household energy footprint and looked at how you would move from a current situation where you're buying petrol and you're using gas in your home to a fully electrified home. And they found that an average household could save anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per year. And that's even when you finance the upfront cost to actually move across those appliances. So you've got cheaper bills, you've got healthier homes. So for those of us who are asthma sufferers, know what it's like to be in a home with gas. My gas fireplace just broke, which I'm extremely pleased about because we'll now be getting air conditioning. And the other benefit, obviously, is you've now got energy independence. So you're generating your own energy from the rooftop, and once you get to the point where you can have a battery, you've actually got yourself quite a lot of independence from the grid. The other reason why we think electrifying everything's a great idea is Australia already has 3 million houses with solar on top of their roofs, and that is the cheapest energy anywhere in the world. So if you look at what you pay from the grid, it's anywhere from sort of 28 cents to 35 cents, depending on who you're with. But once you've put rooftop solar and you've financed that, then that actually averages out at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. And so when you look at 3 million houses around the country doing that, Australia is actually the first place in the world where the economics is actually in our favour. So there's other places in the world where solar is more expensive. They don't have the abundance of sun that we have, or the layout that we have. So solar is actually a huge advantage that Australia has. Saul was actually recently just in New Zealand, where they did a similar study, and they've released similar kind of outlook for New Zealand, which is actually looking like it's going to beat Australia in terms of the economic business case. And then the final reason I'll share with you around why to electrify is it's the money that goes out of our communities today. So if you look at my community of 2515, again, this is the work Saul and his team did a few years ago. There's $15 million coming out of that community of 4,500 people. And as you can see, most of that's going overseas in the petrol and oil that we're purchasing. So once you think about it from that point of view and you look at how much money could be staying in your community, the idea of electrification just keeps on getting better. So now we're going to take you a little bit more into the how do we actually do this. And we try to simplify it at Rewiring Australia into the decisions that you're making at the dinner table. So we don't want everybody to go out and rip out perfectly good appliances today. We want everybody to start thinking about the next time you replace an appliance, let's try to make it electric. Let's also look at just how we get to work and how we get the kids to school, and then let's look at how we heat our homes and our water. So if we break it down to just how we travel, how we cook, how we heat our homes and water, and then where we get our energy from, this is the way that we want to try and think about it. And so what does an all-electric home look like? I think the audience here is probably pretty familiar with a lot of these things already, but we're looking at a heat pump hot water system to heat your water. We're looking at air conditioning to do your space heating. We're looking at induction or at least electric cooktops, electric vehicles, rooftop solar, and then underpin all of that with a battery. So they are the 6 decisions that we want everybody to really take the time to think about over the next 10 years and definitely move to electric where possible. And a little bit about efficiency. So funnily enough, Adam actually came to my house a couple of years ago and did my energy assessment, so I can wholeheartedly endorse Adam and the work that he does. And we are definitely all for double glazing, sealing up your windows, doing all the other efficiency things in your home. But I think what kind of gets lost in the efficiency discussion is just how much waste there is in how we burn fossil fuels today. So a lot of what we put in energy into vehicles is actually lost through heat. So on the left-hand side, you can see an average home uses around 102 kilowatts per day, and that's when you factor in the petrol going into your vehicle as a kilowatt. If you switch over everything to electric, you're actually reducing it down to 37 kilowatts a day. So from an efficiency point of view, it's actually a 75% reduction to go from burning things to an electrified household. So let's get into the numbers. Again, this is all about the next 6 decisions you make for your home. So when you're looking at those household devices that you're going to be buying or household appliances, let's think about the running costs, not just the upfront costs, because that's where you really start to see the difference between a cheap gas instant hot water system or a potentially more expensive heat pump hot water system. But if you look at the running costs over 15 years, then this is the sort of story that it can tell for what it can do for your household expenses. So on the left-hand side, we've got the gas alternatives. The LPG tanks is obviously the worst situation. Moving over to the left, where we've got electric resistance or electric heat pump hot water systems. And on the right-hand side is when you've actually got that connected to your solar. So an electric heat pump hot water system is again 75% more efficient than the gas equivalent. And then when you're powering that through solar, you're actually paying extremely low cost to heat your water every day. And you're in fact using that solar in effect to have your hot water system to be a battery to actually store that for later on. If we move across to space heating, so most of us have reverse cycle air conditioners. Maybe out here in the Highlands, it's probably more skewed towards the wood fireplaces, which I definitely appreciate as well. But if you're looking for space heating, obviously you can do heating and cooling. The reverse cycle air conditioner is the way to go. From a cooktop point of view, if you compare it to LPG, there is a big drop in the efficiency, but the cooktops is really more primarily around your health. So that's not having the burning flame and the gas toxics going into your household while you're cooking. And I'm actually yet to, believe it or not, use an induction cooktop, but from what I know, they are extremely easy to use and very easy to get used to once you move off from gas as well. And then finally, if we move into the big thing that you can change and the one that I've had the most experience in, which is the running costs of your car. So again, on the far left is how much it would cost to run a petrol car for 15 years. And then if you were to get an EV but not have anywhere to charge it at home and have to use the NRMA or the EV one in town, then you're still saving quite a lot of money. You're paying more than you would at home, but you're saving quite a lot more money compared to petrol. It gets better again once you've got solar, similar story to the hot water system. So I've had an EV for just over two years now. So my situation was we had to get a second car. And a lot of people that I talk to about EVs, especially out sort of more in regional areas, it really is the best thing you can do if you need a second car. So I definitely understand there's situations where you've got one car and you still need to go long distances. The infrastructure might not quite be ready for those trips yet. But for us, it was a second car. We looked at petrol, we looked at electric, and my wife couldn't care less what she drives. So I really had to do the business case and convince her that we needed to spend a bit more money. And the way that I worked it out was by paying a little bit extra for the electric car, we could pay that difference off within 3 to 4 years. So basically we were back to break even, and we've had it 2 years now. We've saved just over $7,000 in petrol and servicing costs. We've got solar. I haven't factored in solar. I've just used that as a business case for, what if I was paying 35 cents for every kilowatt? So the dollars definitely stack up. And from a vehicle reliability point of view, it's a 5-year-old car. We bought it secondhand, and it's now done over 120,000 kilometres. And most of those kilometres have been just from Wollongong to Shell Harbour or Wollongong to Sydney. We've done a road trip to Canberra. It can only do 230 k's on a road trip, which is, it's a 5-year-old car. It's not what the new ones can do. They can do probably 400 plus. But yeah, I can definitely attest and happy to chat to anybody about EVs if they're interested. So that's a little bit more about the how. And what we really want to do at Rewiring Australia is, as we said, get everybody thinking about what's the next thing I need to replace. and start the research now and make your plan now. So not everybody will want to or can afford to do this all at the same time. So let's break this out, and as long as we all make the same correct decisions in the next 10 years, then we can all move together. And what that looks like as a community and as a nation means that we can now bring the emissions down to where we need to be in the next 5 years, which is what this is all about. So how are we doing that at a local level? So a little bit about Electrify 2515. So as I said, that's from the area that I'm in. It started off with a small group of parents who were super passionate about how we can get communities engaged on this topic. So working with Saul, who was sort of the ideas man behind it, we asked our community who would like to be involved in a pilot program. So they initially set out the objective of getting 500 households to want to participate in electrifying their house, and they got 500 within 4 days. Fast forward sort of a few months later, and we had over 1,000 people, and that was back in August 2022. And so what we did with that sort of community response was we teamed up with Saul and Rewiring Australia, who I now am fortunate to work with, to apply for an ARENA grant. So that unfortunately has taken a lot longer than anyone expected for anyone who's been involved in grants before. So it's 2 years on. We've been able to keep the community sort of engaged by doing things like solar rollout. So we teamed up with some solar providers and offered 10% off for everybody to get solar. We've run EV open days, and we run sort of market stalls to try and educate people on the how to electrify everything. But soon we're hoping to be able to share some positive news that we'll be able to actually launch the Electrify 2515 pilot. And what we're trying to achieve with that is it's trying to get as much learning as possible so that we can go through the process of 500 houses going from a whole range of situations, and they all need all different, some might need cooktops, some might need heat pumps. How do we actually learn as quickly as possible so that we can then share that learning with the rest of Australia? So it's a grant that's funded by the Australian Renewable Energy Agency. So all of the work that goes into that will then be publicly available to the industry and to other communities to try and learn from that, so that we can basically try and make the mistakes and face those challenges so that everybody doesn't have to. So we're hoping to share more on that very soon. But yeah, it's been a really exciting thing to see a community come together so positively and so quickly. So to give you an idea, it was 4,500 people. So we had 4,500 people. We had 1,500 people sign up. So it's one of the biggest kind of responses to a pilot that they've seen. So I'll just leave you with a few more thoughts just around how we help electrify everything for everyone. So this is just more about the work that Rewiring Australia is doing. So if we think about the overall problem we're trying to solve, which is how do we get all of those gas and fossil fuel appliances to move electric, unfortunately we've still got quite a big job to do. So this is showing on the grey how many electric appliances we have installed today, but then the green is actually where we need to get to as a nation. Unfortunately, we're still putting about 1 million new gas appliances in our houses every year. And at a household level, we're actually connecting more houses to gas than we're disconnecting. So there's some states who are actually moving towards that, making sure every new house doesn't have a gas connection. There's some councils who are doing that. So we're looking to see some leadership on that. And the barriers as well is something that we're really trying to tackle. So the upfront cost and the lack of knowledge is what people were telling us as the reasons why they haven't gone electric already. So from a Rewiring Australia point of view, we're trying to tackle that from two perspectives. We've got the top down, which is where Saul and his team working in Canberra, working with a lot of the agencies there, but also the Teals, Labor, Liberals, they're completely bipartisan. We basically want to talk to anyone who wants to electrify, and they're really receptive to this, and we're starting to have some really, really positive conversations. And then on the other side, we've got the bottom up, which is where community groups like WinZero come in, ideas and pilots like Electrify 2515, because we all know that if the community and the people aren't saying they want this, then it's not something that politicians are going to engage on. So that's how we're thinking about it. And if I can just sort of leave you with the final thoughts around, from a national point of view, if we just do this for the people that can afford it, it's not going to work. We need to basically make this work for the low income and the people who can benefit the most from it. And we've put forward a concept which is a little bit like the HEC scheme, but for electrifying your house. So, basically finance at no cost to electrify the things that you need to today, and then you can pay that off once you get to an income level or once you sell your home. So that's an active idea that we're pushing to get support on. We also think renters are a big area of the community that haven't had much help. So, we want to look at how we can get mandatory disclosures in place. So when you go to rent a house, you kind of look at that house the way we showed from an appliance point of view. That house is going to cost me $500 a week, but how much does it cost me to run the house? So we want to have mandatory disclosures around what that house has. And we also want to see some minimum efficiencies. So, there should be standards that landlords are held to in terms of the way that house is actually set up. And then finally, there's the big stuff that Ty would have talked to you about today, which is the energy market reform. So there's obviously a massive transition underway. At the moment, households aren't very well represented in that transition, and there's a lot of things that we can be doing to make it easier for households, especially as we all start to be effectively the generators of energy. So if you actually pull together all of Australia's rooftop solar, they're actually the number one energy generator in Australia, bigger than any coal-fired plant in Australia. So we need the government to start thinking about that and treating households as energy infrastructure so that we can all benefit from the transition as well. And then finally, without communities like WinZero, we can't make this happen either. So there's communities all around the country. We've been approached by hundreds, which have been doing excellent work, long before Saul came over here 4 or 5 years ago, but there's still so much work to be done. And we really appreciate all the work that you're doing and putting on days like today and spreading the conversation. So thanks very much for your time.